Alright guys, I got the Buffalo Bore 375 grain Barnes XPB. Let's see how many sheets of sheetrock it'll penetrate through. Solid copper expanding bullet out of my 6.5 inch barrel Smith & Wesson Model 500. Alright guys, so now we're going to shoot the Underwood Ammo 700 grain Hardcast. Has an advertised velocity of 1,200 feet per second, and out of my 6.5 inch barrel revolver I'm getting around 1,075 feet per second. 700 grains Hardcast flat nose. Let's see how many sheets of sheetrock it'll go through. Alright guys, first hit was a little bit high with the 700 grain Hardcast. For some reason I always shoot this ammo high, maybe because of the recoil, maybe I flinch a little, but I'm going to take another shot. Alright guys, so now we're going to hit it with the Underwood Ammo 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator. Let's see how many sheets of sheetrock it'll go through. Alright guys, now we got the Underwood ammo 420 grain extreme penetrator. Let's see how many sheets of sheetrock it'll go through. 6.5 inch barrel, Smith & Wesson Model 500. Alright guys, I got some fresh sheetrock. I'm going to hit it again with the 700 grain Hardcast. I want to get a good hit in the middle. Alright guys, so now we're going to hit it with the double tap 400 grain Hardcast. Has an advertised muzzle velocity of 1800 feet per second. Out of my 6.5 inch barrel Smith & Wesson Model 500, I chronograph this load, I get around 1,625 feet per second. So let's see what happens to the sheetrock. Alright guys, so now I got the Buffalo Bore 400 grain mono metal. Let's see how many sheets of sheetrock it'll penetrate through. I'm going to take a second shot with the 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator. Alright guys, now I got the Hornady 350 grain XTP hollow point. Let's see how many sheets of drywall it'll penetrate through. Alright guys, so I want to go over the results of the test. There were some pretty interesting results here. Surprisingly, the Underwood Ammo 700 grain hardcast penetrated the deepest, and it penetrated through 50 sheets of 1/2 inch standard drywall. And I took 3 shots at the drywall. One of them penetrated through 50 sheets, and the other 2 penetrated through 43 sheets. And up until this test, the deepest penetrating 500 Magnum load that I tested inside of Sheetrock was the Buffalo Bore 440 grain hardcast, which penetrated through 40 sheets. And so the Underwood Ammo 700 grain hardcast beat the Buffalo Bore 440 grain hardcast by 10 sheets, which is very interesting because in other media that I've tested, the Buffalo Bore 440 grain hardcast bare load had double the penetration of the Underwood 700 grain hardcast. For example, in 2x10 lumber, the Buffalo Bore 440 grain hardcast penetrated through 8 and 9 2x10s, while the Underwood 700 grain hardcast only penetrated through 4 2x10s. So in wood, the Buffalo Bore 440 grain hardcast out-penetrated the Underwood 700 grain hardcast, basically double the penetration of the 700 grain hardcast. But in drywall, for some reason, the 700 grain hardcast out-penetrates the 440 grain hardcast from Buffalo Bore. So I don't know why that is. It's really interesting to see how bullets interact with different types of media. And I've had this happen before where one type of bullet will out-penetrate another type of bullet in one type of media, but in another type of media, it'll be completely different. So very interesting results. I was surprised by that. Moving down the list, the second deepest penetrating load in this test was the Buffalo Bore 400 grain monometal, which penetrated through 36 sheets of standard 1/2 inch drywall, a little bit less than the Buffalo Bore 440 grain hardcast. And by the way, the Buffalo Bore 440 grain hardcast is the deepest penetrating 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum factory load that I've tested so far in a variety of different media. So I use that as basically the gold standard of penetration and performance. So I measure up other loads to the 440 grain hardcast. So you'll often see me referring to it in my tests and in my videos. So pretty interesting. The 400 grain monometal penetrated 36 sheets, only 4 sheets less than the 440 grain hardcast from Buffalo Bore. Then we had the Xtreme Penetrators, which performed really well. The 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator penetrated through 28 and 29 sheets, and the 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator penetrated through 25 and 28 sheets. So the 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator penetrated slightly more, just 2 to 4 sheets more than the 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator, and that's to be expected. In 2x10 lumber, the 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator penetrated about 1 2x10 more than the 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator. And if you want to see that video, I'll leave a link at the top right corner of this video. But the 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator penetrated through 6 2x10s in a previous test that I did, and the 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator penetrated through 5 2x10s in that same test. So it makes sense that it would penetrate just a little bit more in the drywall. Now, the 375 grain Barnes XPB from Buffalo Bore penetrated through 28 sheets, the same amount of penetration as the Xtreme Penetrators. The 400 grain double tap Hardcast, I was expecting that one to penetrate the deepest, but actually it only penetrated through 33 sheets. So that was the third deepest penetrating load in this particular test, right behind the 400 grain monometal, and that's actually the same amount of penetration as a 44 Magnum bare load and 10 millimeter bare load. So I've done the same test here with the 10 millimeter and the 44 Magnum, and the 44 Magnum with Underwood ammo 305 grain Hardcast bare loads penetrates around 33 sheets, and the 10 millimeter with Buffalo Bore Heavy Outdoorsman 220 grain Hardcast penetrates around 33 sheets. So pretty similar penetration as the 10 millimeter and the 44 Magnum inside of drywall. Pretty interesting. I was expecting a lot more penetration with the 400 grain double tap Hardcast, just because the velocity is pretty high. It's over 1,600 feet per second out of my 6.5 inch barrel. And by the way, if you guys are interested in seeing all of my penetration tests with the 500 Magnum and chronograph tests, check out my 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum playlist. That's where I have all of my 500 Magnum videos. And interestingly, the 350 grain XTP from Hornady penetrated 33 sheets, the same amount as the 400 grain double tap Hardcast. So that's really interesting, and I'm going to show you guys the bullets shortly, but the 350 grain XTP barely expanded. It actually didn't expand at all, and that's really interesting. But that's actually normal in drywall. Hollow points do not expand, okay? A lot of people think that if they use soft point bullets in their home, that the bullets are going to open up and slow down, and they're not going to penetrate as much as a full metal jacket. But as you can see, the results of this test prove that no matter what kind of bullet you use, whether it's a Hardcast, a solid, or a soft point bullet, it doesn't matter. You're going to get roughly the same penetration in sheetrock or drywall. Okay, so for example, the 350 grain XTP you would think would penetrate the least because it's a hollow point and it's moving at a high velocity, but it penetrated 33 sheets, the same amount as the 400 grain Hardcast from Double Tap, which is a solid non-expanding bullet, and it actually out-penetrated the Xtreme Penetrators, which is really interesting. So just remember that, guys. Soft points, hollow points, when we're talking about sheetrock, behave the same as a solid, because sheetrock is dry, it's soft, it doesn't provide enough resistance for a hollow point or a soft point to really mushroom up like plywood or just regular wood or even living tissue. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So pretty interesting results, guys. So the deepest penetrating load in this test was the 700 grain Hardcast. It penetrated through 50 sheets. And the least penetrating load was the Underwood ammo 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator, which only penetrated through 25 sheets. And I just want to give you guys some results from prior tests that I did. If you want to see those tests, check out the links at the top right corner of this video. But I did test also the Buffalo Bore 400 grain soft point, and that one penetrated through 34 sheets. I have tested the Hornady 300 grain flex tip, which penetrated through 26 sheets. And I also tested the Hornady 500 grain XTP, which penetrated through 20 sheets. So pretty interesting results here, guys. So what I want to do is I want to show you the damage that was done to the sheetrock. I'm going to go through each sheet one by one so you can see the holes that were left and the wound channel. And I'm also going to give you guys a close-up look at the bullets. We're going to weigh them. We're going to take a close look at them, see what kind of deformation occurred. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so I actually had to use 2 batches of drywall. Okay, so I'm going to go over the first batch of drywall. I took 3 shots with the 700 grain Hardcast. 1 shot skimmed over the top, and then the other 2 were right next to each other. I was trying to get one of the shots up here because I already took a few shots in the middle, and I was aiming in this area and it kind of went a little bit high. And then I also took a shot in the second batch with the 700 grain Hardcast. Okay, so I'm going to go over the first batch, then we'll go over the second batch. All right, guys, so here's the first sheet. Okay, 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator, 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator, 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator, and the 375 grain Barnes XPB. All right, so just remember the locations of all these hits as we go through all of the sheets. Here we have sheet number 2, and what's interesting about the Xtreme Penetrators is that they leave these kind of screwdriver-like holes in the sheetrock. It's pretty interesting. And here are the exit holes from the second sheet. Here we have the third sheet. Here we have the fourth sheet. Here we have the fifth sheet. Here we have the sixth sheet. You can see no expansion at all on any of these bullets. The 375 grain did not expand at all. It's supposed to expand, but it's a solid copper bullet, so I wasn't expecting it to expand in drywall. But look at the size of these holes from the Xtreme Penetrators. Just massive holes here, those screwdriver-like holes. And then here we have these big holes from that 700 grain Hardcast monster round. Sheet number 7. Sheet number 8. Sheet number 9. Sheet number 10. Sheet number 11. You see the holes are starting to get pretty big. Sheet number 12. Sheet number 13. Sheet number 14. Sheet number 15. Sheet number 16. Look at these holes here. Massive holes. These are the Xtreme Penetrators. You can actually see it looks like they're starting to tumble here. A little bit of tumbling going on some of these. Okay. Sheet number 16. Here's sheet 17. 18. 19, 20. Look at the size of those holes. 21, 22, 23, 24. Look at these holes, guys. Massive holes from the Xtreme Penetrators and the XPB. Just massive, massive holes. And here are the two 700 grain hard casts. Sheet 24. Here we have sheet 25. Look at that, guys. That is just absolutely insane. And then here we have where the 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator kind of almost stopped in the 25th, but it actually punctured the back of the 25th, so that's why I said 25 for the 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator, but it just barely poked a hole here in the 25th sheet. So, and then look at these holes, guys, from the 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator and 375 grain XPB and the 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator. And then sheet 26, this is where the 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator was stuck in the 26th sheet. Here we have sheet 27. 28. 29. And then sheet 29 is where the 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator, the 375 grain Barnes XPB, and the 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator all got stuck in the 29th sheet and got stopped by the 29th sheet. Okay, so look at those dents. Okay, pretty impressive dents there, but no pass through on the back. Okay, but they were sideways, all right, which happens a lot with the Xtreme Penetrators. That's one of the negatives of the Xtreme Penetrators, is that they do tumble. So that's something to keep in mind when you buy these. Here we have the 30th sheet. 31. You can see both of the 700 grain hard casts still penetrating. 32. 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. Pretty impressive. These 700 grain bullets are maintaining a straight line. 39, which is to be expected. 700 grains, the sectional density is just insane. Very long bullets, so it's very hard for it to veer off course. 40, 41, 42, 43. We have sheet 44, and you can see the nose of one of the 700 grain hard casts did not penetrate. You can see here it just kind of left this dent. It did not puncture the paper. Okay, and then the other one is still going. Here we have sheet 45. You can see this little dent in there. 46. And here we have 47. 48. 49. And then here we have 50. See, it penetrated the 50th sheet, all right, punctured the paper on the back of the 50th sheet, and then it got stopped by the 51st sheet, okay? It left this dent in there, but it did not penetrate, okay? So let's go on to the second batch now and go through those. All right, so this was our first sheet, 700 grain Hardcast, 400 grain Hardcast from Double Tap, 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator. This you can ignore. This is a hole from a different test. Here we have the 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator and the 400 grain mono metal from Buffalo Bore. Okay, so let's go through these one by one. Here's the second sheet, and here you can see that 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator, leaving that classic screwdriver look. We have the third sheet.
We have the fourth sheet, fifth sheet, sixth sheet, seventh sheet, eighth sheet, ninth sheet, 10, 11, 12, 13,
14. You can see the holes are starting to get big here. Okay.
15, 16, 17, 18, 19,
20. Okay. 21.
22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, all penetrating still, 29,
Here we have 30, and the 420 grain Xtreme Penetrator got stuck here in the 30th sheet, so it penetrated through 29. The other ones are still going. 31. 32. 33, and this was from the 400 grain Hardcast from Double Tap, and it ripped the back of the 33rd sheet and left a hole. Okay. And it left a hole in the 34th sheet. Looks like I made a numbering mistake. This should actually be 34. Okay.
35, we still have the 700 grain Hardcast still passing through. 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44,
45, and you can see in the 45th sheet just a little bit of the paper was ripped. So actually 44 sheets of penetration, not 43 like I said earlier. So the 3 rounds that I shot with the 700 grain Hardcast penetrated 50 sheets, 44 sheets, and 43 sheets. And then here's the 46th sheet, just a little dent. So I'm going to show you guys the bullets up close now, and we're going to weigh them and take a closer look at them, so stay tuned. All right, guys, so I got my digital reloading scale, and I zeroed it out. I got my 100-gram calibration weight here. I just want to show you guys that this thing is perfectly zeroed out, 100.00 grams. And we're going to switch over to grains now. So here was the winner, if you want to call it, of this test. This is the Underwood Ammo 700 grain Hardcast. And you can see no deformation whatsoever. But look at how long this bullet is. This bullet is just extremely long. And you can see that most of that red Teflon coating was burnt off. And the nose still very flat, but you can see the edges of the nose got worn down a little bit from the drywall. So for those of you guys out there who think that hardcasts are true solids, they're actually not true solids. They are malleable. They do deform a little bit. They're not as hard as copper, okay? So you will get some deformation, as you can see here with a hardcast. So this one penetrated through 50 sheets of standard 1/2-inch drywall. Let's see how much weight it retained. 667.4 grains out of 700. So that's really good weight retention. And I couldn't find the gas check for this one. I don't know if they even use gas checks on these 700 grain bullets, but I did not find a gas check. And you can see some holes in the base of the bullet, and I'm guessing that's from the gases. So it's possible that they don't use a gas check. But look at the size of this bullet, guys. This thing is just monstrous. Look at how long it is. And I have done a chronograph test with this bullet. And out of my 6.5-inch barrel, the Underwood factory load with this bullet, I can get 1,075 feet per second. That's pretty impressive for a 700 grain bullet to still get that much velocity. And here we have the other hardcasts, the ones that penetrated through 44 and 43 sheets. And you can see they pretty much look the same. You can see the edges there of the nose got worn down just a little bit. And let's just weigh them and see what kind of weight retention we got. 674 grains and 675 grains. So pretty interesting. And now moving on to the second deepest penetrating load in this test, the Buffalo Bore 400 grain monometal. And you can see no deformation whatsoever. The nose of the bullet is still perfectly intact. No erosion or anything like that. And I just want to show you guys a comparison between the 700 grain hardcast and the 400 grain monometal. Look at the size difference between these two bullets. Just huge size difference. And this is a 400 grain bullet, guys. This is not small, but it looks tiny compared to this 700 grain monster. But one thing you'll notice is on the 700 grain hardcast, you see how the edges of the nose just slightly eroded away or got worn down by the drywall. But you can see the 400 grain monometal had no deformation, no erosion at all. It's basically 100% perfectly intact. The nose just looks perfect. So let's weigh it, see what kind of weight retention we got. 399.5 grains. So basically 100% weight retention for the 400 grain monometal. And now we have the 400 grain hardcast from Double Tap. And you can see the nose got flattened out quite a bit. Look at that, guys. The nose got flattened out quite a bit. It deformed a good amount. And again, hardcast bullets are still lead. Okay, they're a harder alloy of lead, but they're still lead. They're not copper. But you can see
Still a massive bullet, but look at the nose. The nose got flattened out. So looks like whatever hard cast they're using in this load, it's a pretty soft hard cast. It probably doesn't have a very high Brinell hardness rating. I'm guessing it's probably below 20 on the Brinell hardness, because these 700 grain hard casts have a Brinell hardness of 21 or 22. And this particular hard cast was traveling at over 1600 feet per second, so that does contribute to the deformation, 500 feet per second or more of velocity over the 700 grain hard cast. But still, look at the deformation, guys. And I did manage to recover the gas check, and the gas check, I found it in the 30th sheet, so pretty interesting. And this one penetrated through 33 sheets. Let's see what kind of weight retention it has. So 385 grains, so it only lost 15 grains. That's really good. And that's what you want to see with these hard cast bullets. It's okay if it loses a little bit of weight, but as long as it doesn't lose too much, then you're good to go. Here we have the 375 grain Barnes XPB, and you can see it did not open up at all. Okay, perfectly intact except for the rifling marks, and the crimp groove just has a bunch of drywall embedded in it, but no expansion whatsoever on this 375 grain Barnes XPB. Okay, no expansion whatsoever. All right, you could see all that drywall got embedded in the hollow point. Let's see how much weight it retained. 376.6, so it actually gained about 1.5 grains, and that's just because of the dust that got embedded in the nose. As you can see, the nose is just filled with that drywall dust, but no expansion whatsoever. So pretty interesting. As you can see, 100% intact, no deformation whatsoever. And here we have the 420 grain Xtreme Penetrators. No deformation at all with these. You can see they look perfect. Okay, no deformation whatsoever. You can see those screwdrivers are still perfectly intact. No deformation. And I've never seen these deform even on 2x10s shot out of my 4570 at over 2,200 feet per second. These Xtreme Penetrators don't even deform at that high of a velocity. They're very hard bullets. So let's weigh these and see what kind of weight retention they have. I'm sure it's 100%. 420.1 and 420.1. So both of them retained 100% of their weight. Now let's move on to the 350 grain Xtreme Penetrator. Also 100% intact, no deformation whatsoever. Okay, 350.2 grains, so 100% weight retention also. And then finally we have the Hornady 350 grain XTP, and you can see the nose just kind of flattened a little bit, but it did not expand. Okay, and you can see all the drywall dust got embedded in that hollow point, but no expansion whatsoever. Okay, none of the petals peeled back at all. Just a little bit of flattening out. You can see it just kind of flattened out a little bit, okay? But no deformation whatsoever. So let's weigh this one. 350.4 grains. So basically 100% weight retention. So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what other kinds of tests you want me to do with the 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. Check out my other 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum videos. I have them all on my 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum playlist. Until next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. prepare, practice, and persevere.